couple of guys had, marks on their guns that were like, they were running out of space. We're good at direct actions. Capture, kill. That was the name of the game. Oh, watch this. We'll back up a little bit. Okay, there goes the first one. And then you cannot fall back. You cannot let one detail go missed. That's the level of precision that you're looking around at these guys that spend all night working on their gear, all night thinking about stuff. So it's a full immersion into this ability to be the best that we can be. And, Eddie and I, we actually we were in the same room. I think maybe he was across from me. I think we probably would have killed each other if we were in the same room. But we almost threw blows too a couple of times. But out of love, really. At the end of the day, it was just out of silly stuff. But we grew together. But being on that first deployment, it just really opened my eyes on what a warrior looked like. And I had guys I looked up at the team too. Like being on deployment with some of these dudes, where I'm like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy, a couple of guys had, marks on their guns that were like, they were running out of space already, right? So I'm like looking at these things like, okay, this is legit, So I think it's just the level of intensity and seriousness that was put to it. Of course, we always find a way to make things lighthearted and relax a little bit while on deployments. But I think that's the first thing that I remember. And just the op tempo, where it felt like every night, every other night is what it was, And when we would get shut down for a couple of days for whatever reason, it would feel like an eternity. 3 days felt like forever. We're always kind of on edge in a good way too, but when are we going, right? Because you're always on the call. You're always like waiting for that call to go off. And so knowing that every night was a possibility, it just puts you in a different level. I think that's why it's good that we're out and back so quick. So that is just the intensity of the first deployment and, growing in that situation. Hendo, which really, really great mentor of mine, one of the best fighters that I know. I jumped into the mat room right away on deployment, and I got to spar with him. And the first time I sparred with him, within about a week of being on deployment, popped me right in the nose, like blood everywhere. Like as soon as I got in the ring, it was like, bam. I'm like, okay, this is how fighting looks at this level.
Mm-hmm.
These guys take this seriously. So it forced me to be accountable, to be like, I got to get my act together here. And that's kind of why I took combative so seriously, as I had a great mentor. I had somebody that really cared about being the best they could be with hands-on stuff. And every situation was kind of like that. You walked into this environment and then you would get punched in the nose and start bleeding, realizing like, this is real. I got to step up. Everything forces you to level up when you're around that type of precision and excellence. And I think that's what the first deployment showed me. This is what you should expect. This and more of what guys are capable of.
How long was the deployment?
I mean, they range from, 1 to 4 months.
1 to 4 months?
Yeah, just depending on what it was, where it was. And literally sitting here thinking I'd have to go back and look. Like I even forget how many deployments, like short ones, long ones, back to back to back. They happened really, really quick turnarounds. I think the timelines have since changed a little bit, but again, that's stuff that I'm like, whatever it is now, it is.
Yeah. What were some of the missions? What was the objective?
Well, we're good at direct actions. I mean, everything kind of surrounded that. There was some specialty stuff in between, but the majority of it was mounting up to go hit a target. Capture, kill. That was the name of the game. I always said kill, capture in my brain because I'm thinking I might have to kill you. And then if you don't need me to, then I'm going to capture you. So that was the thread throughout the entire time. It was that was always on the table, and understanding, what's the threat going to be. Scariest environment imaginable is always what we laughed and joked about, about going out the door. Like it's going to be the scariest and worst thing possible. That's what you visualize. That way I'm up here ready for it. And then when I confront it or actually hit the reality, it's not as bad as I was making it out to be. And, you do that intentionally. It's like swinging two bats before you go onto the plate, right? You're swinging heavy weight, so that when you go up, when the reality one is a lot lighter and you do it a lot faster. So I think that I carried that idea all the way through, but it was really just kicking indoors in different ways again and again and again. Our tactics and our ability to evolve was almost instantaneous. Like we would come up with stuff on the fly, and me and Eddie, I always say me and Eddie because it's just really easy to relate to, but me and Eddie would just look at each other and nods and be like, that worked. Like, we're going to do that next time. We would talk about it afterwards and be like, hey, that was awesome. Let's do that again. Breaching. I mean, man, Eddie pioneered like several different tactics, like right in front of my eyes, that people weren't doing, weren't thinking about, weren't implementing. And Eddie was just like, I'm going to try this, and then it would be an amazing thing that other guys would do throughout the time. And so it's almost like we were part of this pioneering earlier on, as well as these things evolving. As the enemy kind of changed like an amoeba, so did we. And we were kind of just staying on their heels, always trying to not let them get too far out ahead of whatever their tactics were. Houseborne IEDs, their direct action tactics, a lot of little weird nuances that would just pop up out of nowhere. Then it would be a thing, and then it would go away. One of those examples, in fact, and again, I'll bounce around from deployment to deployment. I have a hard time keeping an idea, like very systematically saying which ones were which. But when Mike and Nate were killed, we knew that the guys at some point knew there was like a phase line. They knew we were there. And so what they would do is that they would take an AK, they would spray the AK, I think one mag, and then flip it and do another mag. And then they would run at us and blow themselves up. So it was like this very violent, they would all do it together. They would burst the ammo and then run and try to take somebody with them. And it got to the point where that almost got sort of comical because we knew it was going to happen. We kind of predicted it, like, oh, watch this. We'll back up a little bit. Okay, there goes the first one. And then, so it in a sense, right? That's kind of like the sentiment that happened a couple of times. But at the same time, some of their tactics, we had to learn the hard way, about what they did and what they implemented. But we would change very rapidly and stay above that. So a lot of learning was going on.
What would be an example of one of their tactics that you had to learn the hard way on?
Probably, again, I always have a tough time because I don't want to navigate down a road that puts anybody at risk. But I think stuff they were doing inside of the building internally with houseborne IEDs.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.